Most of us assume that if we're not constantly busy, that we are falling behind. Hustle culture teaches us to work harder than everyone else, be as busy as possible, fill up your schedule, make a ton of money, lift yourself to the top, and only then are you considered successful. But today, I want to challenge that and offer a new way of thinking about progress. I spent years working harder until I realized that I wasn't actually moving forward in the direction that I wanted to go. So this is a video all about how to make fewer but better decisions by learning to do less so that what you do matters more. So let me start with a story. There were two rowers that set off across a lake. Rower number one put everything he had into speed. Rapid strokes, splashing water, never pausing, trying to go as fast as he could to get to where he was going. The second rower, on the other hand, moved a little bit more calculated. He was slower, his strokes were more measured, and midway across, he actually stopped in the water. He paused and he took a breath. He looked up, checked where he was headed, adjusted his direction, and only then did he continue rowing. The first rower that was solely focused on speed reached the shore first, but at the wrong dock, and he was exhausted. The second rower arrived shortly after, but exactly where he intended to go. If you've ever felt like you're constantly moving, constantly building, being a hustler, yet you still don't feel any closer to what you actually want, you're not alone in that. You might be rower number one right now. You might be disciplined, driven, you work hard, but you're rowing with speed without direction. But speed without direction just leads to burnout. Rower two didn't beat rower number one because he worked harder than rower number one. He didn't hustle more or was more on the grind. He won because he worked with intention and deliberate action. Rower number two allowed himself to be still, to think, and to change his direction when needed. And that was the difference that allowed him to beat rower number one to the destination. In the first phase of my career and for the first couple years in my career, I was rower number one. I worked in a variety of different startups. I worked in every single industry that you could think of, just trying to get as much experience as I could. I said yes to every single opportunity that came my way, stacked roles. I did whatever it took to gain experience. I was learning how to make money, how to solve problems, how to get things done. And for that season, it was exactly what I needed. That's how I got in my career from point A to point B. But just like the rower, I eventually looked up and realized I had reached a dock, but it wasn't necessarily the one that I ultimately wanted to arrive at. And so I had to stop and ask myself, is this where I actually want to be? Or did I just get here because I never took the time to aim? So I paused, I reevaluated the direction that I had come from and the direction that I was heading. And when I got back into the boat, I wasn't necessarily rowing harder, I was rowing with more intention. And that was where the transition from point B to C happened for me. I stopped focusing on how much money I could make and started focusing on how effectively I could solve problems for other people using the skills that I built in this first phase. So from point A to point B, this is where I think there's a lot of value in building and starting your career that does align a lot with hustle culture or getting experience. But where a lot of people go wrong is they just continue to focus on doing the things that get them from point A to point B and never shift the momentum into a different direction in their life. So I want to talk about just a few of the things that are important to recognize and realize if you are in this phase. These are some of the things that are important to embrace early on to keep with you if you're in phase one. The first is to say yes to almost everything. I said yes to literally every opportunity that came my way. If that was working in social media, if that was learning how to do operation, I worked in every industry you could imagine and just tried to get as much experience as I could. I took on multiple roles. I worked long hours. I was chasing opportunities. At time, it didn't necessarily feel like I had a direction that I was going, but I knew that I was getting experience in the field that I wanted to go into. All of this is centered around building your value. So point B to point C, the important thing to do inside of this phase is to create space to think. You have to learn to say no to things that pull you away from the important stuff that you need to spend time on. You have to learn to be deliberate and selective to allow yourself to free up your time, your energy, your processing power, and that's the only way that you're gonna get from point B to point C. So to shift your perspective from being rower number one, who's focused on speed, working as hard as he can, which eventually leads to burnout, and shifting that perspective to being rower number two, who's more deliberate, focused, aligned, intention driven. These are a couple of things that you can do today to focus on and how to do less and achieve more. So the very first thing that you have to do is look at where you're spending time. Everyone will say, audit your calendar, look where you're spending time. Is it worth it? Is it not? Look at it through a different lens. And I like to look at things from the lens of push versus pull. Basically what that means is, what are the things on your calendar? If you were to go through and look at all of the activities, not just saying this was worth my time, this wasn't worth my time. If you looked at all of the places that you were spending time, and I want you to write either push or pull next to what that activity was. Push basically means an activity that you have to push yourself to do. For me, that's usually the things that I know that I'm procrastinating, that I need to get done, but I keep pushing off, and they end up on this list. I need to push myself to get those activities or those things done. Pull are the things that I feel pulled towards, that I feel a gravitational pull, and I want to, and I'm excited and energized to work on those things. And the goal with this is not to eliminate any work, it's to eliminate any resistance-based work that's filling up your time and taking energy away from you. Yes, there's gonna be things that maybe are work responsibilities or tasks and you just have to spend time in the trenches, but doing everything you can to optimize towards working on things that you feel pulled towards. Once you've audited your time and run through and looked at all of the activities and where you're spending time, the next thing after that is to get crystal clear on what you want. All of the times that I've experienced burnout in my career, and honestly most burnout, comes from a lack of clarity. It does not come from a lack of time. This is the thing that you should and deserve to be most selfish about. Define, what am I actually trying to build? Why am I trying to build that? Who benefits from it? And then any of the activities, if that is what you feel pulled towards, any of the things that you do and spend your time on, whether that's doing less or doing more, you're going to achieve more because it all points back to the clarity of what you want. The final point in this plan of things that you can implement today is to design your week around the pull. So if you can look at where you've spent your last week and where you want to spend the next week, it's not necessarily about working less, but it's about working on fewer things that actually matter. And as you work on fewer things, you're going to free up more time where you were previously executing to do what I think is the most important shift from point A to point B and point B to point C, is you are now adding intentional margin time for thinking. And this is where better decisions are made. So the reality of all of this is, and bringing this full circle, is if rowing harder was the answer, most of us truthfully would already be where we want to be. But it's not just the rowing that's the factor here. The real shift happens when you pick up the oars, you stop for a moment, and make sure that you're rowing towards the right dock. And a lot of people miss out on this, and this is where hustle culture gets us wrong. We focus so much on the grind, the push, trying to work as hard as we can. How much money can I make? Me. Because at the beginning, it's just about building the habit of learning how to row. But once you understand how to row, the long game is learning the actual right form of rowing. And that's what real success looks like. As you do less, you will achieve more in the long run.